What's up, guys? Welcome to the Rapid Potential YouTube channel. We are going to be installing a Holley sniper on this RX-7, and this is part 3 of the video series where we are going to remove we're going to remove the original Nicky carburetor and lower intake manifold, remove the fuel lines, fuel pressure regulator, and other assorted vacuum stuff up here. If your car has the full entire rat's nest, you will be removing all of that. You will also be removing your air pump as well, which resides here. And if you don't have an aftermarket header, this would be a great time to install a header. If not, you're going to have to block off some other exhaust recirculation ports that are down lower on that manifold. So, what we are installing in this video in replacement of that is we're going to be installing a Racing Beat Holley 4-barrel manifold, and we're going to be utilizing Holley's adapter plate here to go from a 4-barrel to a 2-barrel, and then we are installing the 2-barrel version of the Holley sniper because this is just a stock 12A. We don't need all the horsepower. That one is rated to 400 horsepower. I think we'll be okay. Plenty of airflow for this little 12A. So, to remove this intake manifold, if you have all of the vacuum stuff and you have all of the air pump on here, this becomes a real pain in the butt. I'll link a video that I've done in the past working on a stock 12A car that shows how all of your emission stuff can be removed, how you can remove the harnesses. So I'll put that in here. It's a white 12A car that we put back 100% to stock. But the gist of it is, start removing things until you can get to the 4 base plate carb bolts here, and 2 on that side. You may need to take a wrench. It'll be a 12mm wrench. And I've made this tool right here, which is a socket welded to a box inside of a wrench. And I can use this to essentially reach down and under all of the emissions junk, like that, and then put it on the bolt head and use the socket to take it off a little bit at a time. It's really hard to get an actual wrench in there. The other trick is, which I've done this to a 10mm, you can bend a 12mm wrench like this so you can reach down in there and get it. Same concept, super hard to get down to not only these 2 bolts, but that one down there is a real pain in the butt. So once you've removed the carburetor, which you will see here in a second, there's going to be 6 bolts, or I guess 4 bolts, 2 nuts that hold the lower intake manifold to the block itself. I can show you that on this engine right here. You can see the gist of the ports. You're going to have 2 bolts here, 1 nut there, 1 nut there, and 2 bolts on the outside. Once you get all those off, the intake manifold will come off. Now, if you haven't drained your coolant and you haven't removed the water pump housing to install the coolant temp sensor for the Holley sniper, you're going to make a mess with this if this is the first time that this intake manifold has been off. From the factory, Rotary cars, or some of them, we'll say, your older ones, have a coolant circulation path that comes out of the housings here and goes through the intake manifold and then back into the housing. That is there to help heat the carburetor up faster, just to make the car run better in the winter. And if those ports haven't been sealed or blocked off, coolant's going to come flying out. And it's a lot more than when you just remove the hoses. It's going to get everywhere because it's really hard to catch it when it comes out the side of the block. Fortunately, on this engine, when I installed this carburetor and the stripped manifold below it, we put freeze plugs in those ports so we shouldn't see any sort of leakage coming out, and I will show you those freeze plugs once I get the thing apart. With regard to that, on the Holley manifold, you will not have any ports here. So I would recommend either putting freeze plugs in it. You can put quarters in there with some silicone, or your assorted hack to seal those off. The Holley shouldn't leak anything, but I have known or have seen on my cars, if you just use the paper gasket that comes for the Holley manifold, the coolant will soak through it and it'll start leaking, and it'll leak into your engine, and you'll think you have a coolant seal failure. So, if this is your first time on the Rapid Potential YouTube channel, please subscribe, hang out, check out the rest of the Holley sniper stuff. If you're seeing this right when it gets uploaded, we probably haven't gotten to the part where we're driving and tuning this car, so stay tuned for that if it's not up. If not, the main Holley video will have all of these videos in the description, as well as a playlist called Holley Sniper on the channel. So go check out the rest of them if you're installing your video, or if you're installing the Holley Sniper on your car. I hope that the process is going well for you, and feel free to comment below if you have any questions. So let's get this off of here. Let's get that manifold off of here and get this cleaned up, and we can start putting the shiny stuff back on. Stoked. So now that we have the entirety of the intake manifold removed, I went ahead and took advantage of the time where everything was removed from the engine bay that I needed to remove. So now we're only putting parts back on, and I went ahead and degreased and pressure washed the entirety of the engine bay. Hopefully you guys can see this thing looks fantastic under here. I probably should have went ahead and degreased and pressure washed the bottom of the hood, but I didn't really want to make a huge mess in my garage. So you can see that corner looks fantastic. We got the whole wiring harness hanging out up here. I cleaned. That fender well's looking nice. I even cleaned back up in here. So the next part of this is assembly, right? We're going to mount the Holley Sniper and the manifold and the adapter to the engine. So I have the manifold chilling out here, all freshly cleaned, which was brand new. You can see these ports are a little close to the edge. I don't quite like that, because this is the actual size of the port here, and yes, we're using a tall port gasket, and this is not a tall port manifold. So the manifolds from Holley come as short ports, because some of the earlier 12A stuff is actually a short port, which I don't think I have one sitting around, but there are short and tall center ports. The gasket, OEM Mazda 12A gasket, they're the best gaskets you can get. Other than, if I can find the one we took off of here, I don't know what brand this one is, but it's a thicker, kind of grayish material. They seem to work pretty well as well. I don't really like using the cork ones. If I do use a cork one, I'll put silicone around everything. So OEM Mazda blue gasket goes on here just like so. These little holes will be where a fresh set of coolant seal O-rings go. Even though we have freeze plugs in there, still going to put the O-rings in it just to be safe. I'm going to put a slight skim coat of silicone around each port on the engine and on the gasket, just to make sure that any sort of fuels, any sort of that sort of thing doesn't deteriorate the deal. Man, my screen's all dirty. I apologize for the dirt in that clip. I also have the side of the engine, the gasket surface is scraped and wire brushed off, so they're nice and clean, nice and fresh. And I need to still clean the front for putting the water pump housing back on, which the water pump housing, I got to make a new gasket for the for the top of this, for the thermostat. That'll go in there, and this will go back on here like this. So we got to put that back on yet. Not entirely part of this video, but still got to do it. So, like I said, the 6 bolts you take off, the 6 bolts you put back on. If you have your stock cast iron manifold in here, you're going to have to plug whatever emissions stuff is on that. This port right here is an emissions recirculation port, and that one is just going to get covered up by the bottom of this. As you can see, this gasket doesn't actually have a provision for it, so that'll just get covered up by that for now. I don't think anything will come out of there because we have a header. If it does do weird stuff and make weird noises, then I will just swap this gasket out real quick. The nice thing about I'm going to say using aftermarket manifold like this Holley one, or switching, deleting all your emission stuff, is really easy to service this stuff now. So I don't think, though, any exhaust should come out of that because we have headers. on a 12A. The way we should look at this, though, is... Oh, they do have little ports in there inside the sleeve. So that recirculation comes out of this side right here, or whichever side, it actually doesn't matter. There's two little holes in your exhaust sleeve. It's going to blow exhaust gas out, up through the center iron and out that port to help heat the intake manifold. So I may actually have to grab a different gasket, which I have another one of those gray gaskets here. I was just going to use the tall port gasket. So I have this one. It has a little bit of residual silicone on it from probably being on one of my other cars. So I'll clean that off, put this back on, and we should be good to go. So it'll go like that now. This is a short port gasket, and this should provide a sealing surface between the manifold and that EGR port versus using that one. The more you know. We have this, we'll just go ahead and use it. On the gasket, I've simply done, you can kind of see there where it's shiny. I cleaned off all the little bit of old silicone. And basically all I do is, like, imagine you're finger painting. You just kind of want to smear it around the ports. And what that's going to do is keep this gasket from absorbing liquids, which then softens the gasket. If you have like a rubber gasket, obviously that repels liquids, or a multi-layer steel gasket like you can get for the newer cars. So this is going to go on the engine. We're going to put a little silicone around the two O-rings as well, these which sit basically in here like so, and then slap the manifold on. Put that silicone in there, things will stick, so you have to hold it. So, the upper gasket up here, I won't put any silicone or anything on this. Most of the time, any liquids that will accumulate here will go down into the intake. This is just a low point, so I want to be a little more cautious. Tip before I move you guys out of the situation here, you never want to tighten any of these down until you have all of them started. Just because sometimes these manifolds don't fit exactly perfect, and none of these bolts have a shoulder or any way to really like center the manifold on them. There's no dowels or anything. Because I figured out it is easier to put the plate on the sniper first with the bolts that are included. They don't stay in here, they're not threaded, they're just a bolt. So putting the plate on this first with the gasket, here you can see the bottom of the deal there, and then I'm going to go ahead and put it back on here. I did grab, fortunately, used to be a Holley guy, I had a base plate gasket that doesn't have the center cross in it. This is the one that has the cross here. So before I had my big Weber carburetor, sorry about my fan air, before I had my big Weber carburetor on the bridge port, I had a half bridge, and I had a Holley 600 or 650 double pumper on there with a spacer, and yeah, it was mean. So, alright, I'm going to put you back down. We're going to put that on here. Alright, my dudes, the sniper is sitting on there. I got to tighten the bolts down, which you guys don't really care too much about that. This is how I'm going to choose to orient this. It's going to be basically the same scenario as if you had a regular Holley carburetor on a rotary. Throttle cable pull is at the back. You're pulling from the bottom in order to activate everything here. You can see, yes, we do have a 2-to-4 split. It's not like a what the heck do they call it? Like a whatever plane, or the manifold for a small block Chevy. It's not like that. It doesn't have a plenum in it. It's just like we're spraying into 4. The plenum is the carb spacer for us right here. And I've chosen, this works out really well because the return line is here, the feed line is here. These two get to go right to here and here on the car. All the wiring can come right underneath my little mat, keeping the fenders nice. With your O2 sensor plug there. Water temp sensor plug will loop around the front of this and go to the back of the water pump, which I will put on right here, which you guys will see in a little bit. And then after I get all this stuff situated and get the water neck back on, we're going to talk about air cleaner options, because we are really sitting up pretty high with the spacer and everything on here, and I had to deal with this with my 650. And then we will, that'll pretty much be the end of this one. or I guess I'll show you guys what the Holley manifold Racing Beat throttle cable bracket looks like. But I'm probably just going to make my own throttle cable bracket, and I'll show you guys how to make that in this video here in a second as well. It'll probably just mount to one of these bolts and come off and go up. I'll figure something out. That's typically how the Racing Beat one mounts. And I think I can probably just use the Racing Beat one, but I only have one of them here, and this kit didn't come with one, so I'm going to try to make one for this so I can keep mine. But that's how she's looking so far. So we will return here in just a second with some more info after I get some more work done here. Would you just look at that? Thing is slick. Okay, so I have all this stuff tightened up, ready to go, not coming off. Here is your throttle cable. Alright, it's going to chill somewhere in here so that you can punch the throttle, pop this baby wide open, pulling from the bottom. Okay, now typically on a Holley, on a Rotary, and for some domestic Holley applications, you have these two little pieces here that bolt together through the linkage, and then your cable, the bead on the end of the cable goes in between them. You tighten this down, and that holds the bead, right? So you get that extra inch of throw. This is the Racing Beat throttle cable bracket. Okay, so it's designed to sit on top of those bolts like that, and the throttle cable mounts out there and then pulls on that linkage. Okay, so since I don't want to use this one on the car, it's a little crusty, it's bent, etc., I'm going to make a new one. So this is some 1/8 inch, I think, maybe a little bit thicker, flat bar stock. I've already done some grinding on the end of it so it fits nice and flush up against the carb spacer bracket, because I don't want this to turn, as I'm only going to use one bolt of this whole situation. So with that ridge there and one bolt here, it can't turn. Now, the tip and trick I want to show you is, obviously, I can't guesstimate the length I'm going to need. I mean, you could measure it off, etc., right, to get you close. But the easiest way to make sure you have the right length, take the thing you're trying to mimic, and if it has bends, lay it on here about where your hole is going to be. So I'm going to be offset just a little bit there. Fold this down, and then fold this up, right? And now you've got, where my finger is the end of the length. Okay? So my micrometer says right there. So right there, fold it over, and you're close. So I got a little bit extra. I can always grind it off. I'd like to round that end anyways, so no big deal. So I'm going to chop this here. Then I'm going to put some bends in it, just in the vise, just like this. You can see where that one's bent. Drill the hole back here where I need it, and then this piece is going to sit just at an angle like this. Not quite that far, about like that. And then I'm going to bend the end of this up so it's flat with the throttle cable, i.e. the bend of the metal is going to line up like this, not like this. It's going to be like this. And then we'll be able to drill the hole, slot it, and that'll be your throttle cable bracket. Much simpler, and trust me guys, I know it's a stock 12A. You're going to be mashing this throttle super hard to try to drive the heck out of this thing, but I don't think you're going to break this. So be plenty thick, plenty sturdy. You know, this is pretty overkill for a throttle cable bracket, if you ask me. So I'm going to go ahead and fab up that, paint it, get it installed on here, and then I'll probably have that on too before we talk again. So I'm going to get to work. Alright guys, so coming to the end of this video, we're going to talk about air cleaner options, and then we're going to show you my fancy throttle cable bracket that we just made. Look at that bracket. That thing is nice. You can see it doing its thing right here. So I made my bracket just a little bit long. It's probably, I don't know, a ½ inch too long. It's no big deal. I have to order and get another set of these little Holley adapter bracket things anyways, so I'm going to see if I can get longer ones. If I do get longer ones, I'll put it in the link in the description. If you make your own bracket, obviously I'm not going to be selling this bracket in any sort of spec. So if you make your own bracket, make it the right length. They give you a good bit of distance to play with here as far as adjustment on your throttle cable, so I should have just made it a little shorter, but, you know, no big deal. I like the way it looks. It's situated nicely. I'd have to kind of reconfigure this whole side and remake it, so I'm not going to. I'm probably, those two little, basically it's a glorified adapter thing. I mean, you bolt this side, right? This is what we're working with here. This side attaches to the carburetor. This side attaches to your throttle cable. The length here, X, can be any length. It doesn't really matter. So I may just make some that fit my throttle bracket to put on this car. So the Sniper didn't come with anything that adapts that. You have to figure out your own throttle cable bracket. I believe they sell a whole slew of throttle cable brackets from muscle cars. So if you're installing one on a muscle car, you can configure it that way. And yeah, this is the setup right here. We got full beans on the throttle. You hit the pedal, she gonna ride out. So that's all we're really looking for there. Cable routing, it's kind of just going to chill in here. I mean, typically, you know, this you could tuck it underneath your oil cap, but it's about just how they look on these cars. And I got to put the alternator back on. The water pump is on. If you didn't see that video, go check it out on getting your coolant temperature sensor installed. O2 sensors are installed. I'm going to work on the wiring for the next video, and we should be getting closer to getting this thing fired up. I still got to do the fuel lines as well. So fuel lines or wiring next video, and then we need to configure the fuel pump under the car. So thank you guys very much for watching. I am stoked to see this thing installed on here finally. We'll pull vacuum right there. But thank you guys very much for watching. Like I said, pumped to see this thing on here. Pumped to see this car get configured. The last thing we need to talk about before I close the video out, which is what I was about to do, air cleaner. Okay, so with my old Holley, I was unable to run an air cleaner on the top. You need a low clearance air cleaner. All right, and running one of those ones that has the dinner plate on it that like tapers down right around your carburetor gets a little tight on a rotary car. You can probably make it work, but you generally will run into your water neck. So what we're probably going to do on this car is I'm going to advise my buddy to buy one of those like Turbonetics or a what's the other company that makes them? Basically a carb hat, okay, that bolts on, has a tube that we can then run an air filter up in that corner, which will be a better situation anyways, not getting super hot air. Eventually you could cordon it off and section, make a little air box right here to here that could sit in, seal with the hood, get nice cold air over here. So that's what I'm going to advise him to do. The hood clearance is not exactly prime when you're running this adapter plate. If you are running a 4-barrel and you're just bolting it straight to the manifold, you can get a racing beat, fancy looking Frisbee intake. That's what I call them. They look like an ultimate Frisbee. You can run one of these on there, but this, which is the one for the Nicky, so it sits a lot higher, will not work on this setup. So fortunately, we can probably get a nice aluminum or black carb hat. The hose should go under the strut brace. If not, we can notch it out, or hopefully it's short enough that the tube can be notched for the strut brace, and then we should be good to go there. So pretty stoked with how it came out. As always, drop any questions or comments below. And thank you guys very much for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Keep it rad.